Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
That power is getting ready to be put back in us. For those who believe and have ears, that power that Yahweh Shah had on earth, we're going to get that and more. And we're going to get those heavenly bodies, man. See, Yahweh Shai died on the cross and went through all that he went through so he can go back on the right-hand side and be glorified. We're fighting and making our bodies a living sacrifice so that we can eventually be back glorified with him as well as we were before the foundation of the earth.
The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with God. If so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same, in hope, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body.
Eternal life. That's what's promised to the elect. All right, all Israel, but it starts with the elect. And that's how the earth will be governed by immortals, perfect angelic forces who are going to come down and rule on earth. Extraterrestrial bodies will be able to do things that humans do, but in heavenly bodies. Like eating, drinking. Did not Yahweh Shai say he's going to drink wine with us in the kingdom? Well, how do you drink wine with a spiritual body? Well, we're going to have out of this world capabilities in those new bodies.
Yo, dude took your ball.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, we would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers. And peace and blessing and salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out there. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. All right, and with GMS Mississippi Camp and coming with another lesson and continuation, dealing with the different empires. Now, we did last time we did dealing with the thighs of brass, all right, dealing with the statue, which goes into, all right, the Greeks. Okay, so now, we're dealing with the four generals, because first we did one, lesson, dealing with Alexander and him conquering, all right, those silver arms, all right, and chest, okay, of silver, which represent the Medo-Persian Empire, all right, and now we're just going into the four generals that reigned after, Alexander, all right, and these four generals, which of the four, all right, the Seleucid Empire, will play a major part in Hellenizing, okay, Jake, okay, so that's history, that we should know, and we're going to touch on it. We're not going to go super deep into that history, but we're going to bring out, certain points, all right, dealing with how, the post-Alexander era played a major part you know, in the history of Jake, and Jake being, you know, Hellenized to the point it was being referred to as Greeks. Okay, because to understand the New Testament, well, you have to understand this point in history. Okay, there's dealing with Jake, you know, under all right the Greek Empire, especially under the region of the Seleucid Empire. Okay, so let's start off here, bro, with Daniel 7 and 6.
This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 6. It says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had the back, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
Yo, so this is all right, the Greek Empire under Alexander the Greek. Okay, he is likened unto that leopard, you know, because he conquered so swiftly. Okay, and after his death, okay, his empire was split in 4 ways. All right, between 4 generals. Okay, so those are those 4 heads. So we're going to go into all right these 4 generals, these 4 heads. Okay, and then we're going to delve into the Seleucid Empire a little bit. All right, as for the history, because the history can be found in the book of Maccabees, you know. So let's also go here to Daniel the 8th chapter. Okay, so this is when, all right, but this is prophecy again, you know, dealing with the Greeks taking down the Medo-Persians. Matter of fact, we'll start at 3. We'll read into the point. We'll start at 4. All right, so let's start Daniel 8 and 4.
This is Daniel chapter 8, verse 4. It says, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great.
Yeah, so this is the Persian Empire, you know, in the peak, the Medo-Persian Empire in the peak of its power. Okay, which will come up after what? The Babylonian Empire. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 5. It says, and as I was considering, behold, and he came from the west on the face of the whole earth.
He goat.
Through water, bro. I'm gonna start
from he goat. Yeah.
Through water. It's Daniel 8 and 5. It says, and as I was considering, behold, a he goat came from the west out of the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between its eyes.
Yeah, so this he goat, all right, going back into what? All right, the Greek Empire. Okay, and the notable horn was Alexander. Okay, and it said his feet touched not the ground, showing you that what he conquered swiftly. You know, in the 12 years, you know, he conquered, you know, a mass portion. Okay, I believe it's like 2 million square miles. You know, when you go into it, you know, so he covered a lot of ground. Okay, and he was a notable horn, all right, of the Greek Empire. Okay, Alexander, go ahead.
Verse 6, it says, and he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and rammed unto him in the fury of his power.
Well, so this is Alexander taking down, you know, the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 7. It says, and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler.
Yeah, Kohler. Yep.
Kohler against him, and smote the ram, and break his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stomped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand.
Yeah, so This is the Medo-Persian Empire being powerless. Okay, and that word "kolar," it just goes into fierce anger. Go ahead.
Verse 8, it says, therefore the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven.
So the he goat, the Greek Empire under Alexander, which was the great horn, was broken, which he died. Okay, and he died in the peak of his power. Okay, showing you that the Lord just wanted him, all right, to conquer, all right, in that short period of time. And then it says, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven, all right, which is the north, east, south, and west. And we're going to get into, okay, these four notable ones, all right, which we have a video, quick video, a little bit over 6 minutes. And it's going to explain some things, and we're going to, break down these four notable ones, all right, and show you the geography, those four winds of heaven in which their empire, okay, would be established. There are different dynasties of these four generals, how they would be established. All right. So let's go to the video. Let's go back here. So this is going to explain, what was going on post era, post Alexander, the era after Alexander, his death. Okay.
Alexander the Great achieved one of the greatest empires in history, stretching from Greece to the dominions of Egypt, from North Africa to India. But Alexander's early and unexpected death at age 32 in 323 surprised everyone. It is said that, as he agonized on his deathbed, they asked who should succeed him. His answer was the strongest. Alexander left the empire without an heir apparent, causing a struggle between the generals and successors. These disputes became known as the Wars of the Diadochi. The Diadochi were Alexander's chief generals and trusted men. Soon after the leader's death, they began to fight for power. In addition to the generals, there were presumed blood heirs, such as Alexander's brother, who was named Philip III, a mentally ill man who needed to be under guardianship. There was also Alexander's widow, Princess Roxana, who gave birth to a boy named Alexander IV. But because of the Persian lineage of both, he and his mother were poorly regarded by the Macedonians and were murdered as a result. During the conflicts of Alexander's generals, Philip III was executed. The generals eventually reached an agreement. Power would be divided among those who had accumulated the most power during the Wars of the Diadochi. After the Battle of Ipsus, the great empire was fractured. Four powerful Diadochi formed four strong nations. General Antigonus was a contemporary of Alexander's father, King Philip II. During the Wars of the Diadochi, he fought so that Alexander's empire would not dissolve. However, other Diadochi allied against him, and Antigonus's only way out was to allow the empire to disband. Antigonus was left with the dominion of Macedonia. He died still fighting against his rivals. Plus, he guaranteed his successors control over Macedonia and founded the Antigonid dynasty. His
Now real quick, let's just go into this history and show how Antigonus, okay, was replaced by Cassander. Okay, so let's go over here real quick and get this history, because Antigonus, he emerged, as one of the generals, but he will be quickly replaced by Antigonus. All right, by Cassander. All right, so it says Cassander, all right, did not defeat Antigonus alone. The two were rivals in the war to Diadochi, the successors of Alexander the Great. And Cassander was one member of an alliance that ultimately took down Antigonus. Okay. It says the formation of a coalition. It says after antagonists grew too powerful and showed intentions of reuniting Alexander's empire under his own rule, Cassander joined forces with Ptolemy, Seleucid, and Lysimachus, okay, which were the other three generals, because these are the four notable ones. Okay. These four here. Cassander, all right, Ptolemy, Seleucus, and Lysimachus, all right, Lysimachus, okay. So Cassander will replace antagonist in Macedon. Okay, and there wasn't no antagonist empire. Okay, Cassander will replace that. Okay, and these are the four notable ones. These are those four heads on those on the leopard was Cassander, Ptolemy, Seleucus, all right, and Lysimachus. Okay, so you read on. It says it said the Battle of Ispis in 301 BC. This was the decisive battle that led antagonists. All right, they led antagonists defeat. The coalition of Cassander, Lysimachus, and Seleucus fought and defeated the forces of antagonists and his son, all right, Demetrius. So his dynasty was rooted out the earth. Okay, antagonist was killed during the battle. The defeat resulted in territories being divided among the victors. Okay, so they split up the territories that was under, all right, antagonist, okay, rule amongst, Cassander, Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Seleucus. Okay, and it says antagonist was killed during the battle. The defeat resulted in his territories being divided among the victors, who secured Cassander's control of Macedon. Okay, so just to clear up, their history, and now it's gonna go on to talk about the other generals. So let's go back to the clip.
Descendants sat on the throne of Pella in Macedonia until the arrival of the Romans. Another powerful diadoch was Lysimachus, who grew up from a young age alongside Alexander. His father was a trusted officer of King Philip II. As an adult, he served as one of Alexander's bodyguards and therefore had a lot of prestige. After the king's death, he took control of Thrace. But during war between the Diadochi, he annexed many territories in Asia Minor. Lysimachus proclaimed himself king of Thrace, but to belong to the Macedonian lineage was to live with a knife at one's neck due to the numerous conspiracies surrounding the Macedonian nobles. His subjects in Asia Minor revolted and united with Seleucus, another prominent diadoch. Lysimachus died in battle, trying to regain his domains. The general Seleucus was appointed satrap of Babylon, controlling most of Alexander's empire. But the lands were so vast that the territory became known as the Seleucid Empire, stretching from the Mediterranean to India, inheriting most of the mighty Persian Empire. Seleucus Nicator was one of Alexander's most important generals. Alexander had great confidence in Seleucus, who, in addition to his military skills, had talent at the negotiating table. His boss sent him on several important diplomatic missions. At the beginning of the Wars of the Diadochi, Seleucus dominated a large part of Mesopotamia. Babylon was his headquarters until he founded the city of Seleucia as his capital. Dominating the route between west and east, Seleucus's empire prospered, and wealth made him very powerful. Seleucus's army had more than 500 armored elephants, causing a terrifying sight for any opponent. These animals played a decisive role in the Battle of Ipsus. With his army, he annexed territories of other Diadochi and consolidated his position as the greatest force in the Near East. Seleucus was assassinated, but before that, he ushered in the Seleucid dynasty. Even in the face of resistance from the local populations, this lineage managed to maintain for centuries the importance of the empire founded by Seleucus. The Seleucid Empire was one of the great empires responsible for spreading Hellenistic culture into the East. As well known and powerful as Seleucus was the Macedonian general Ptolemy Soter. He was recognized as a skilled commander and a born leader, as well as having a passion for culture. Upon Alexander's death, he was appointed satrap of Egypt. But during the war between the Diadochi, he proclaimed himself pharaoh of Egypt, founding the famous Ptolemaic dynasty, which reigned in Egypt for centuries. Ptolemy bravely defended his possessions against Macedonian rivals. He allied himself with Seleucus and managed to defeat his opponents. Ptolemy made the city of Alexandria at the mouth of the Nile Delta the capital of the new Egyptian empire. Under Ptolemy and successors, the city flourished and became the most important in the world until the rise of Rome. Two great works were built: the grandiose Alexandrian Library and the awe-inspiring Lighthouse of Alexandria, now one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The dynasty founded by Ptolemy ended in 30 AD with Cleopatra's death. The dynasties that succeeded Alexander the Great continued to rival each other for centuries, but their great achievement was to spread Hellenistic culture throughout all the territories under their rule.
So that wraps up, those 4 generals. Like I said, which it was a very quick, descriptive summary of those generals, okay, and what they would do, what they would establish, their different dynasties, all right, amongst those 4 generals. Now I have a picture what their empire looked like, so you can see, okay, because it said that those 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds. All right, so you see when you have Seleucus, which had the vast, he had the biggest portion, okay, of the Greek Empire. All right, so you had the Seleucid that was in, the east. All right, you had the Ptolemaic dynasty that was in the south. All right, you had Cassander in the west, and you had Lysimachus in the north. Okay, now when you continue on in Daniel, all right, the 8th chapter, it goes into what you call the Syrian wars, the wars between the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire. And it refers to the Ptolemaic Empire as the king of the south, and the Seleucid Empire as the king of the north. All right, because as you can see, the Seleucid Empire was north, okay, of the Ptolemaic Empire, okay. And you can, go into those Syrian wars, and it goes into the back and forth. The book of Maccabees goes into those back and forth between Ptolemy, all right, and the Seleucid Empire, okay. So as you can see, Israel, all right, was in the middle of Ptolemy and Seleucid, okay. And what would happen, the control of Judea would go back and forth between the Seleucid and the Ptolemy Empire. All right, and under the Seleucid Empire, that's when Jake, really became Hellenized and turned out. Okay, so we're gonna get that. All right, in the book of Maccabees, you're gonna jump around into some history. Okay, dealing with that. Now, let's go here to the book of 2nd Maccabees. All right, let's start here. Okay, now this is 2nd Maccabees chapter 4, and we'll start at verse 7. All right, and then we'll jump to 1st Maccabees 1 and 1. Okay, all right, you got it, bro.
This is the book of 2nd Maccabees chapter 4, starting at verse 7. It says, after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
No, I said people pronounce it either Antiochus or Antiochus. So it's a different pronunciation, but it's either pronounced Antiochus or Antiochus. You guys do.
Come for sure. The water. It says, after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom.
Yep.
Jason, the brother of Onus, is it Onias?
Onias. Yeah, Onias. Yep.
Onias labored underhand to be high priest.
Yep.
Verse 8, promising unto the king by insertion 303 score talents of silver and of another revenue 80 talents.
Yeah. So by intercession, which he so here it is. You got to the point to where Ananias was a righteous high priest. Okay, but you had his brother Jason. All right, he was infatuated by Greek culture. Okay, was pretty much do as thou wilt. Okay, so he labored underhandedly. He worked out, deals. Okay, with Antiochus. Okay, Epiphanes, which Antiochus. This is the one you read about in Maccabees, the first chapter. And what he was doing to Jake during that time. But you had to sell out Jason, who sold his brother out, all right, to be the high priest, okay, under Antiochus, okay. And this is when the high priesthood will become political, okay, during this time. And we see that same thing play out even during the time of the Romans, okay. Now, um, read verse 9, Baba Shah.
Verse 9, it says, beside this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license to set him up a place to exercise and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochus.
Yeah, Antiochians, you
Antiochus.
know. Yeah, so it's no different than being called Americans, all right, because America is an Edomite, okay. Amerigo Vespucci, Italian map maker, is an Edomite, okay, or African American, which goes back to Leo Scipio Africanus, okay, which was an Edomite Roman general during the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage, okay. So Jake, was being turned out, okay, by the Greeks to the point that they was calling themselves Antiochians, man. The same thing as being called American or African Americans, okay. So this is the effect, all right, that the Greek culture had on Jake. Jake wanted to exercise and have gyms and work out naked, and Jake just was tripping. Okay, they started to desire the fashion of the heathen, and the beginning with wicked leadership selling out, all right, to the Greek, okay, governments, man. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what you got, bro? You keep reading.
Verse 10, it says, when the king had granted, he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashion.
Yeah, so he brought his own nation to Greekish fashion. You see, this all happened before the New Testament. This is before Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke. Okay, the epistles. This is generations before that. Okay, so this is why the term Greek, okay, or Hellenist, okay, is heavy within the New Testament. Okay, which we're gonna get some examples. So let's jump down to verse 13, Bible Shah.
Verse 13, it says, now such was the height of Greek fashions and increase of heathenish manners through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly wretch, no high priest.
So through Jason, okay, which is gonna be a Benjamite when you keep reading this chapter, he's gonna sell out Jason. Like these niggas was paying to sell out. Okay. These niggas was undermining each other because they wanted their high priest office because it became a political office that came with perks and you would be amongst the elites, okay, of the heathen. Okay. And what did they do? They brought in Greek culture amongst Jake. Okay. Turning Jake into straight heathens, man. So that's why, so we're just gonna jump around the Maccabees for a minute. Okay. But it started with the conquest, all right, of Alexander. Okay. All this started with the conquest of Alexander. You know, so when you read Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 1, and you read down, it talks about Alexander taking down Philip. Okay, and then it goes into after what Alexander died. Now let's start at verse 5. Go ahead. First Maccabees 1 and 5.
This is the book of First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 5. It says, and after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die.
Mm-hmm. This Alexander being sick. Go ahead.
Wherefore he called his servants, which were such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive.
Yep. So this is going to those four notable ones. Okay, that was established. These four different territories, these four different regions. Okay, within the Greek Empire. You see? Go ahead.
It says, verse 7. It says, so Alexander reigned 12 years, then died.
Go ahead.
Verse, and his servants bare rule everyone in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth.
Yeah, so because what was spread, all right, it was the Hellenization period. Okay, so just like the Hellenization period is described as evils being multiplied in the earth, well, it's the same thing with Westernization being spread in the earth today. Okay, so evils multiplied because what did they push? Hellenization, man. Okay, which was pro-alphabet, do as thou wilt, different sacrificing the pagans, and orgies and partying, and this god and that god, and you see. So Hellenization brought a very wicked spirit in the earth, man, a very dark, all right, perverted spirit in the earth, man. All right, and this is what these devils do every time they come into power. All right, that's why in Malachi, Esau is known as what? The border of wickedness. When they said he will rebuild, all right, and it says what? That he was known as the border of wickedness, man. So we see this, okay, we see Edomite culture, okay, multiplied in the earth under the Greeks. Okay, now it goes into this wicked root, okay. What you got at verse 10, bro?
Verse 10, it says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks.
Yeah, and so now you have Antiochus, which come from what? The Seleucid Empire. And there was multiple, Antiochus, it was many of them, just like there was multiple Ptolemies, and okay, so you have multiple, kings, all right, of the Greeks. They will be named Antiochus, and Ptolemy, so when he comes on the scene, what happens? As we just read in Second Maccabees, the 4th chapter. Okay, because remember, Second Maccabees, the 4th chapter, all right, is explaining First Maccabees 1 and 11. So you got it, bro.
This is verse 11. It says, in those days, when there are out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and take a covenant with the heathen that are around about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow.
Yep, go ahead.
Verse 12, so this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king and gave them licenses to do after the ordinance of the heathen.
Go ahead, read 14.
Verse 14, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen.
Yeah, so Jake, all right, began to be covetous of, the way of these Greeks, how they were living, no restrictions, you see? And you had Jake that was in the flesh, and they were like, look, let's live like them. Let's make an agreements and deals with them. Okay. To where we're not, restricted. We don't have, they want to be under the structure, okay, of the law. They wanted to do as thou wilt, you know. So they began to what? Conform unto the Greeks. Okay. And then you had a resistance amongst Jake. Okay. But what did this cause? Okay. So now let's jump down to 41.
41. Con.
Verse 41.
Verse 41, it says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king.
Yeah, so Antiochus, he pretty much was pushing a one world order on the Hellenization. Okay, which ultimately goes back to Satanism. So you see, Esau today, he's pushing a one world order under Satan. All right, through what they call Westernization. Okay, you got it, bro.
Verse 43. Yeah, many also of the Israelites consented to his kingdom and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath.
Yep, and so you had Israelites that will begin to consent, just like Israelites are consenting to Westernization now, and their ultimate form of consent in this time gonna be their sea hip. Okay, there's you consenting, all right, to the way of the heathen, okay, to this the digital Greco-Roman, all right, system that the devil is getting ready, to present to the earth. Okay, now, let's see where we at. So let's read down to, just keep reading to probably about 50, 51. But keep reading, bro. Starting at 44.
Verse 44, it says, for the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judea that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. Then they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanliness and profanation to water. Verse 49, to the end.
Being profane, which it goes into being profane, which are things outside of the temple, which are unlawful. So his thing was to completely strip Jake away, okay, from the righteous law that was given to them by their forefathers, through Moses, all right, through Yahweh Bashim al-Shai. Okay, so they wanted Jake to be degenerates like them. Okay, they wanted completely strip away Jake from any residue of righteousness, man. The same thing that they're doing today. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 49, it says, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances, and whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. And the
these things were being forced through, all right, the threat of death. Okay, this wasn't no suggestion. Okay, these things was being enforced by the sword. Okay, so you have to understand this what was going on before the New Testament. Jake was being put to death for not doing these things, and you had Jake that took the death. And yeah, you best believe those Jakes are back now. Hey, ready to be rewarded, man, for that. Okay, you go back into the second Maccabee, the 7th chapter, dealing with those brothers and their mother. So you have Jake taking the death and not doing it. Okay, but a lot of Jake they consented. Okay, and that's why eventually you got to the point to where Jake went to war, man. Jake was like, damn, this we finna go to war. You know, that's where you have Mattathias, okay, the father of Judas Maccabeus and his brothers. Okay, so Mattathias, all right, he waged a war against the Greeks, you know, and then, you know, he died and he passed, you know, the baton to his son Judas. Okay, and that's where you have the what you call the Maccabean revolt. Okay, but you had a lot of Jake being turned out. Okay, so let's get one more account in the book of Second Maccabees, the 6th chapter. Okay, and then we'll go to the New Testament and show, okay, this is why the New Testament was saying and it was written, you know, in the fashion that it was written. Okay, because even in the world, I'm like, why does it just say Greek? You know, because Greek ain't, you know, because Greek doesn't cover all the heathen. You know, so what is it? Why was it putting emphasis on Greek in the New Testament? Okay, well, we're going through the history. Why? All right, understanding this history, okay, clarifies. All right, brings clarity to the New Testament. Okay, yeah, let's start at Second Maccabees chapter 6, verse 1.
Come on. This is Second Maccabees chapter 6, starting at verse 1. Not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the
Athens.
Athens
Yep.
to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live according to the laws of the Most High.
So, same thing. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 2. And to pollute also the temple of Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympus, and that in Garism.
Garism. Yeah, Garism. Yep.
That in Garism of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they would desire that dwell in the place.
Yep. Go ahead.
Verse 3. The coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with riot and reveling by
Yep.
reveling by the Gentiles who is it Dalite?
Yeah, Dali.
Who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places and desires that brought in things that were not lawful.
So they were just wild. They turned the temple to a whorehouse, an actual whorehouse, man. Okay, and these were temple harlots. All right, which they would do these sexual acts. Okay, you know, as a ritual to heathen gods in the temple. Jake was wilding. Okay, the Greeks had Jake straight wilding, man. Go ahead.
Verse 5. It said the altar was also filled with profane things which the law forbid. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the 7 days, the Sabbath days and ancient fast, or to profane himself at all to be a Jew.
Oh, so you couldn't even, it was unlawful. You see, this wasn't no light thing. Okay, like I said, this wasn't just no suggestion. Okay, no, it was unlawful. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 7. It says, and in the day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by bitter constraint.
What is it?
Constraint to eat of the sacrifices were the fast of Bacchus.
Yep, which is their party spirit, you know.
And when the fast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in possession to Bacchus carrying envy.
Yeah, Ivy, and that's where you get, you know, this spirit like Mardi Gras. Okay, you know, because it says a fast, but it really was a feast of Bacchus. But so now, all right, it was unlawful for Jake to even call himself a Jew. So what would Jake call himself? Antiochians or Greeks. Okay, so now as we understand the history, and you go to, all right, the New Testament, okay, and I just typed in the word Greek, okay, and you first, when you go into it, okay, let's read a couple, all right, so let's read that in Romans 1:16.
This is Romans chapter 1, verse 16. I am not ashamed of the gospel. Slaki, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Hamashiach, for it is the power of the Most High unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek.
So wait a minute, why is it mentioned in Greek? Okay, because why? You had Israelites, okay, that was turned out by the Greeks. And see, this is several generations. See, we in the book of Maccabees, this is several generations after the book of Maccabees. Okay, so you had, a whole population of Jakes that was living after the fashion of the Greeks. That's all they knew. Okay, but Yahweh Shai, all right, opened up grace to bring those Israelite foreigners, the Gentiles that was calling themselves Greeks back, man, and that represents us. We was Americans, okay. we was the Greeks of this time that came back under Yahweh Shai, man. Okay, so let's read Romans 10 and 12. Go ahead.
Romans chapter 10, verse 12. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord Yahweh Shema Shai over all is rich unto all that call upon him.
So this grace was open to not only those that grew up in the customs of the law, all right, but Jakes that grew outside, okay, what they would call the uncircumcised, okay, or the Greek, okay, which goes into being a Hellenist, and we're gonna show you that, okay. Now, let's jump down to verse 28. Read Galatians 3 and 28.
Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for we are all one in Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai.
Yeah, so Apostle Paul is constantly making a point because he had the office to the Israelite foreigners, okay, those unnatural, okay, branches that was grafted back in, because it's still, because it refers to an olive tree. Well, they're still olives, so they still are the same species. They're still Israelites. They just grew up, okay, uncultivated by the law. Okay, so when you go to, what's that, 1 Corinthians 12, might be second. Let me see that first. All right, yeah. So let's get 1 Corinthians 12 and 2. Read that, Baba Shah.
This is the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. Ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led.
Yeah, so we just read that Jake, was forced, all right, to worship idols, all right, under the penalty of death. Okay, Jake was carried. We just read that, all right, that they had harlots in the temple. All right, they had renamed the temple after Jupiter Olympius. And, you see, offering swine on the altar. Okay, the parade of Bacchus. See, Jake was forced into their culture. Some Jake willingly went, some Jake, they couldn't wait to get down with the freaky deaky, all right, with the Greeks. Okay, but then you had some that was forced with the sword, and then you had a remnant that took the death or fought back under the Maccabean revolt. You see, you got to understand that dynamic. Before you get to the book of Matthew, you have to understand these things. It's a major part of the movie, okay, that has to be explained, okay, to make the New Testament make sense. Because we just went all those scriptures that refer to the Greeks. Why is there so much emphasis on the Greeks? Okay, so now when you get here, as you had the Israelite foreigners just to show this. And you go to the book of Acts, all right, chapter 6. All right. So read the book of Acts, chapter 6 and verse 1.
This is Acts 6:1. It says, and in those days, when the number of the disciples were multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration.
Yeah. All right. So you had the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministrations. So you had Jacob the circumcision, you know, these Israelites, all right, foreigners, okay, these Greek speaking Jews. When you go into, let's see, let's go here to the NL, well, it got in the NET, okay. Let's read that in the NET.
This is the Acts 6:1 in the NET. Now in those days there were disciples who were growing in number, and complaint arose on the part of the Greek-speaking Jews against the native Hebrewic Jews, because their widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution of food.
Yeah, because you had Jake looking down on these Greek-speaking Jews. They was Israelites, okay, because they looked at them, you know, as not worthy. Because, and then they looked at them as like, look, your ancestors sold us out to the Greeks. So there was still that enmity between the circumcision and the uncircumcised. Okay? Because remember, it was a war that broke out behind this. You see, it wasn't no small disagreement. You know, you fell out, you know, with your Uncle Junebug. You know, no, there was war. All right? Generations of war behind it. Okay, so there was an enmity there, and Yahushua, he came and closed that enmity, you know, and brought a way for those Greek-speaking, all right, Jews, okay, what you call Grecians or Hellenists, okay, because you read this here, I don't know what it says, the NAS, so read this one, NAS B95, I mean, what the hell is it? New American Standard Bible, 1995. God damn. You got it, bro.
This is Acts 6:1 in the NASB, New American Standard Bible, 1995. It says, now at this time, while the disciples were increasing in number, a complaint arose on the part of the Hellenistic Jews against the native Hebrews, because their widows were being overlooked in the daily serving of food.
Yep. So you just see Hellenistic Jews, man, these Israelites. Okay, so these Greeks that are spoken of in the New Testament, these are all Israelites being brought back through belief in Yahushua. You know, they believe Yahushua was the Son of God and that he resurrected. They believe that Yahushua was going to bring a kingdom, okay, and establish the promises of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, okay, for the tribes. All right, and they believe that through faith, you know, that they could be forgiven, you know, because they was out there, okay, because wasn't no sacrifices going to bring them back in. It was, you know, the blood of Yahushua and believing on that, okay. So that's why you go here to Ephesians, you know, this kind of put everything in perspective. All right, this tie everything in. So you get to the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, and read verse 11.
This is Ephesians 2:11. It says, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who were called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands.
Yeah, so he's writing to what? Israelite foreigners, who will be known as, all right, Grecians, okay, or Hellenists, Jews of Ephesus. Like, look, you know, the circumcision looks as you, you know, as the uncircumcised, as heathens, as Gentiles, okay? But now you're being brought back in through Yahushua. So go ahead.
Verse 12, it says that in that time Ye were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and the strangers from the covenant of promise, having no hope and without power in the world.
Yeah, so we were through. Just like us. We was in the world, Christians, or just niggas out here, we didn't have no clue or no promises and being descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the throne of David. We were just out here. Okay. Trying to we was out here, we was Hellenized, westernized, okay, living after the flesh, tossed to and fro. You see? But then Yahweh Shah was presented to us. Okay, now we start to understand, like, oh, we descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now we the children of promise. No, this nigga lied. Like, okay, Yahweh Shah, that's our king. That's we were brought back in. So, but before we was just out here in the world. We didn't have this hope that we have now. Okay, go ahead.
Come verse 13. But now in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, ye who sometimes were afar off are made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach.
Yep, or made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach. The sacrifice open up forgiveness for all Israel, the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom, the circumcision, those that knew that they was Israelites, the Hellenized Jews that was out there wilding. Yahweh Shah opening up for everybody to come back, all of Israel. Okay, all of Israel, and of all Israel, there was a remnant that was going to be. So the remnant consists of Israelites from the circumcision, from the Hellenized Jews, okay, and the northern kingdom that was afar off. Okay, go ahead.
Come, verse 14. For he who is our peace, who hath made but one, and have broken down in the middle wall.
Yeah.
Say again.
Who have made both one.
Come, for he is our peace, who had made both one, and had broken down the middle wall of partition between us.
Yeah, so there was the enmity, which you're gonna go in verse 15, read verse 15.
Come, verse 15. Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in the ordinances, for to make in himself a twain one new man, so making peace.
Yeah, so Yahweh Shah, in sacrifice, it abolished the enmity, okay, between the Hellenized Jews and the circumcision, okay, and also the enmity between the northern and southern kingdom, which you see that heavy now, okay, as you have brothers from each tribe, because guess what, under the banner of Yahweh Shah, that's the unity. It don't matter what we came from and what we was on before we came into the belief in Yahweh Shah. That's not even important. Now we follow Yahweh Shah. So no matter whether we're in Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom, or the circumcision, okay, the Hellenized, okay, we all under Yahweh Shah now. Okay, and there's a unity because under Yahweh Shah is true brotherly love. Okay, so Yahweh Shah's sacrifice brought peace, okay, between all sects of Israel, those that will believe on Yahweh Shah. Okay, in verse 16, that's the point, bro.
Come, verse 16, and that he might reconcile both unto the Most High in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereof.
Yeah, by slaying the enmity or that hostility, okay, that was going on, and we see why. You go into their history, so that's the point. I think the point was made, just to get an understanding, all right, going during that time of the post-Alexander era, where Hellenization, became, the popular culture of the time, all right, just how Westernization has become the popular culture this time, in which we had to be pulled out of that, through who? the teaching of Yahweh Shai. All right. So, Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edify once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Kakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. Peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful Shalom.
Shalom.
Mm-hmm.